Our reading today is from James chapter 3. In our text, James revisits the topic of wisdom as God's gift and of good works. James chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. May God bless the reading, hearing, understanding, and doing of this word of God.
Thank you, Jim. You almost had an assistant. That would have been fantastic. And I always, kids are welcome here, and their noise and distraction, they're welcome here. And I'm glad they're here. Even when they jump up on the altar, that's all right. We're in week 8 already of this sermon series. We're spending 14 weeks together exploring the book of James. We've been reading through. Last week was like halftime for us. We were halfway through the book of James, and I encouraged you to think about what's going right and what's going wrong. Now we're just back out on the field. We've just made the turn at the clubhouse, and now it's time for us to start putting into practice some of those adjustments that we were encouraged to do. So we're in week 8, and today thinking about heavenly wisdom. Heavenly wisdom. I put in your bulletin, on the back of your bulletin, a place for you to fill in some notes. I do that on purpose. One, so that you might not fall asleep, but 2, so that, and I hope and pray, that you might learn and grow and experience God's word in a transformative way. And to do that means that we got to dig in. We need to. We need to learn. Remember, James is writing to these 12 churches. If you need a pen, James is writing to these 12 churches who have been dispersed out of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem has been it's an unsafe place for Christians at the time, and those believers or followers of Jesus are still being tended to by this familiar character, familiar leader of this early religious movement of James. And James writes in 5 chapters. Really, he's writing wisdom literature, teaching his followers how to be wise. Okay, how to be wise. Now, wisdom is something that I think is hard to define. Like we know when we see it, but if we were really to ask, wisdom is different than just being smart, right? Wisdom is different than just having experience, right? Today we're going to explore the difference between earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. And we're going to see some of the qualities, some of the characteristics of what heavenly wisdom is. But I want to do this first because that's hard to understand sometimes, right? What it means to be wise. A couple of years ago, awfully popular TV show for some of us came about, and there's this one clip that I want to show you where the mom and the son are trying to follow a recipe. Okay? And you already know what it is. They're trying to follow a recipe, and they know what's printed on the recipe card, but they don't know exactly what that means. Okay. Just like wisdom, we can know what it is, but we don't know exactly what that means for us. So maybe just, and we don't have license for this. We're going to get dinged on YouTube for showing it. But go ahead and show this. Show this program. Like I see, this is what I'm supposed to do. But what does that mean? What does that mean? I think every one of us would say, we want to be wise. And I think every one of us would say, I want to be not earthly wise, but I want to be heavenly wise. That in some sense, that's why you're here. I mean, you got up this morning and said, we're going to go to church because we want to learn, we want to grow, we want to be better. And I want to, rather than follow earthly ways, I want to follow heavenly ways. Except some of us, we don't know exactly what does that mean. It's like, well, you just do it, right? You just do it. Now, in preparation for the chili and pie thing on Friday, I went home and I made peanut butter pie. So if you stick around for chili and pie after church, one of the pies downstairs is peanut butter pie. I love peanut butter pie. It's basically cream cheese, vanilla, sugar, and peanut butter, right? I mean, what could go wrong with that? But in the recipe, it says take a cup of whipped cream and fold it in. I didn't realize that until I was looking at the recipe and it said fold in the whipped cream. And my mother-in-law was home, or she was down here to watch choir and soccer and football this last weekend. And I said, Lynn, this is your recipe. Show me. How do you fold in the whipped cream? And she said, it's easy. You just mix it together, right? But as I had this experience, it's like, fold in the whipped cream. Fold in the cheese. What does that mean? Follow in the way of Christ. Be wise. Be heavenly wise. What does that mean? Let's explore that together. First is this. James, and I'm especially focusing on verse 16 and verse 17 in the third chapter of James, where we hear, where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will be disorder and wickedness of every kind. Where there's envy and selfish ambition, there will be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above, James writes, is pure and peaceable and gentle and willing to yield and full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. So, what is earthly wisdom? Earthly wisdom is defined by this: bitter envy and selfish ambition. Bitter envy and selfish ambition. This is your first building. You're doing great so far. You're not too far behind. Bitter envy and selfish ambition. I don't know about you, but I've looked out into the world. I've looked out from my office or my home or my house, my yard, and I know what I see out in the world. And I would say that a lot of our behavior is defined by bitter envy and selfish ambition. To say it's me first and always and no one else matters, that's selfishness. To say that I am the only person that matters, that's selfishness. And envy is this idea that we're constantly comparing ourselves one to another. To say, well, they have something and I don't have that, so that's not fair. Now, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this or has experienced this, but I think that is earthly wisdom. Bitter envy and selfish ambition. So let's explore then what heavenly wisdom looks like. Okay? What does heavenly wisdom look like? What are the characteristics of heavenly wisdom? Again, I'm just following from specifically verse 17. But first, heavenly wisdom is pure. Jesus says in Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the pure in heart. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be pure? What does it mean to be pure? If you have water with impurities in it, water with impurities means that it's dirty, right? And it doesn't just have water in it, it has other stuff in it, right? Well, then what does it mean to be pure in heart? It means that we have all kinds of things that are pulling for our attention. And some of that leads to bitter envy and selfish ambition. So what does it mean to be pure? If James writes that heavenly wisdom is first pure, what's an opportunity for us to check your heart, right? And then to think about what are the other things in our heart that are leading us directly away from God? What are the things in our heart that are pulling us from heavenly wisdom? Heavenly wisdom is first pure. Second, heavenly wisdom is peaceable. Blessed are the pure in heart, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. We thrive on conflict. We thrive on conflict. We pack stadiums to see who is going to lose and who is going to win, right? We thrive on conflict. Peace is more than just the absence of conflict, right? But that's a start. Rather than constantly being in competition with one another, my friends, be at peace with who God has called you and created you to be. You be pure and be peaceable. Thirdly, heavenly wisdom is pure, it's peaceable, and it's gentle. Paul writes in Galatians, the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and forbearance and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. I need to work hard on my gentleness. I will readily confess that to you, that there are way too many times where I am far from gentle. And I also know that in particular plays itself out too often in my own household, where I've just lost my temper, right? My guess is that I'm not the only one who could be a little bit more gentle with myself, with my coworkers, and with my family. James encourages heavenly wisdom that is pure and peaceable and gentle. Now, I believe this, that we, and perhaps because of the last 20 months, I don't know, but we are, many of us, we're tired. We're tired of fighting with one another. We're tired of hearing, well, this is how we're supposed to go out in public, and now we can go out in public a different way, or those of you who have done a certain thing, then you can go out in public, but those of you who haven't done a certain thing, then you can't go out in public, and sometimes those rules change, and sometimes we just choose to ignore the rules, and I think that we're tired. And when we're tired, what does that mean? We get pretty cranky. Maybe I'm the only one. But when we're tired, we're far from gentle. Friends, heavenly wisdom is pure, it's peaceable, and it is gentle. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with those that you encounter. Be gentle with your family. We hear that heavenly wisdom is pure and peaceable and gentle, and it is willing to yield. Willing to yield. Some of you have students who attend the middle school and the Eastview and the high school. Some of you still drop off your kids there. There's a certain intersection right outside that complex there. It's a four-way stop. I don't know if you've been there recently or not. You should try to go there. Actually, don't try to go there right before school starts. I often am running just a little bit behind in the day, And we're going to be just a few minutes late, and later than what we wanted to be. And then we get to this intersection, where for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's because of the morning sun or what is going on, or because the police kind of sit and watch, and everybody feels like, well, I can't go, but it feels like that intersection is especially slow. And because it's especially slow, what I try to do is I try to jump it. And if somebody doesn't go, like I'm going, I don't know if it's my turn or not, I go, because I want to get through. I confess that. I have a goal for myself this week, to especially in that intersection, go a little bit slower. Because part of heavenly wisdom, James writes, is being willing to yield. Now, I want to be clear about this. I don't believe that means that we don't take any sort of initiative. We don't do anything, right? It's just like, you go ahead, no, you go ahead, no, you. I mean, like at some point you go, right? But I have a goal for myself this week, to yield, especially at that intersection, to start my day following these verses from Philippians chapter 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. I have a goal this week of at least 5 times starting my day by yielding. And I hope that starts to take over the rest of my days. Heavenly wisdom is pure, it's peaceable, it's gentle, it's willing to yield, and it's full of mercy. It's full of mercy and good fruits. Whenever our family would eat at my mom's parents' house, Grandma and Grandpa Federowitz, we would close dinner before we would clear the table, before we would start dealing cards or any game other than euchre, right, Tracy? If you were here a couple of weeks ago, euchre is not a game that I like to play. But before we would move on from the dinner table, we would close with these words from Psalm 107. That just says, "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good, His mercy endures." As a kid, I learned that verse. It was probably the first verse that I memorized as a child, because we said it every time we were done with dinner at my grandparents and my Grandma and Grandpa Fedewitz's home. "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good, and His mercy endures forever." Mercy is a tough thing. I have been, especially this year, tuned into high school football, and that means that I watch the ticker on Friday nights underneath some of the sports broadcasts, and every once in a while you come across those games where somebody won 58-0, right? And there's this mercy rule that's in place. Literally, it's a mercy rule. It says, stop stepping on somebody's throat, right? I mean, literally, right? It's a mercy rule to say, be kind. James tells us that one of the qualities of heavenly wisdom is to be full of mercy, which bears good fruit. Now, Warburg College yesterday went up to Luther College, and they won 68-0. In Stockwell's, they played football. Mike Foss' grandpa was here. He was wearing his Warburg sweatshirt at earlier service. And on some level, we need to stop being so competitive one to another. And I think James is teaching his followers about wisdom. And one of the qualities of wisdom, heavenly wisdom, is being full of mercy. Lastly, if wisdom is pure and peaceable and gentle and willing to yield and full of mercy, it is also impartial. Impartial. Meaning that God shows no favoritism. And so if God shows no favoritism, what does that mean? If God doesn't have any favorites, do you know what that means about you? It means that you are God's favorite. If God doesn't have any favorites, that means that you are God's favorite. And that means that God is not impartial, and God does not want us to be impartial. Favoring one side over the other, favoring ourselves over someone else, that God shows no impartiality. One of the traits, as James describes, of heavenly wisdom is impartiality. And if God shows no favoritism, that means that you are God's favorite as you are. Even if you did wear flip-flops this morning, you are God's favorite. So what does heavenly wisdom lead to? What are the results of heavenly wisdom? Well, James finishes up this section by saying this: a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. Wisdom results in peace. That next one, John. Wisdom results in peace. I was looking for some graphics, some pictures, and I Googled world peace, and I found this picture, and I thought it was neat. And under the caption, it said International Peace Day was September 21st. Did you celebrate International Peace Day? It was September 21st. Did you get excited about International Peace Day? Did you do anything for International Peace Day? It was September 21st. It wasn't that long ago. It was just a couple weeks ago. Any of you? I didn't either. I had no idea that there was an International Peace Day, because world peace, like that's ridiculous. I mean, could we even comprehend what world peace would look like, what it could look like? I mean, the problem is too big, it is too complex, it is too far out there. How in the world, I mean, so we don't even choose to celebrate or recognize, because that's too big. Do you know where world peace starts? Is it close up? Right? Do you know where peace starts? I mean, it's too big out there. Do you know where it starts? For you. And in your house, and in your home, and in your life, and with your coworkers, and with the people that you choose to hang out with, and in your neighborhood. That's where it starts. And I think it starts with heavenly wisdom. Moving away from earthly wisdom, which is defined by James as bitter envy and selfish ambition. And then this peace comes when we experience heavenly wisdom, when we practice heavenly wisdom, which is pure and peaceable and gentle and willing to yield and full of mercy and is impartial. Yesterday, we ran up to Carrie's parents' farm. It's one of my favorite days in the fall. We got to go, and I always say we get to pretend to be farmers. We got a little bit of a later start than what we had hoped to. You can ask Ben why we were so late. Love you, buddy. One of the things we do, at least Al, my father-in-law, he lets me still drive the combine, even in spite of years of experience that he should not let me drive the combine. He got a new combine this year, and by new, I mean it's like 25 years old, but the old one was 35 years old, so this is a new combine. And it's cooler than what the other one was. Even 25 years old combine is pretty cool for somebody like me. And we were making the first row, or making the first pass. He had already opened up part of the field, and I rode along, and he's telling me again, this lever, and then that lever, and then this throttle, and all the stuff. And he kept kind of saying to me as we were going down the road, it's crazy, this new combine. He said, I bet I spent almost a half a day finding all the grease points on this new combine, and kind of saying, this is a lot of work. And then he said, it took me quite a while to get all the beans out, and I had to take those all to town so that I could get the corn in the bin. and kind of saying like that was a lot of work. And oh, by the way, a couple of the wagons, they weren't in good working order, so I had to do a little bit of repair on some of the wagons. That was a lot of work. As if to say to me, this farming thing, it's not just like one afternoon a year, kind of thing, which I was experiencing, right? And so this idea of living wise, heavenly wise, it's not just an afternoon kind of thing. It's not just, I'm going to try that on from time to time. But James is encouraging his followers to be wise and to work at it and to live into it, to try these things on and to know that sometimes they're not going to work and it's going to be hard to yield, and we're still called to. It's going to be hard to live impure lives and still we're called to. It's going to be hard to not show partiality and still we're called to. And day after day after day, it's not just an afternoon thing. It's not just a one-time thing. But we're called to live lives of heavenly wisdom. Wisdom that results in peace.